Welcome everyone to a bonus edition of Monday Match Analysis. It is a data-driven discussion with Tom Corrie of TennisViz and Tennis Insights. He has been on the show before. Think of this as an early season check-in on some of the major storylines that we've seen on court, such as Joao Fonseca being 19-3 since December, Stefanos Tsitsipas's breakthrough last week in Dubai, Felix Auger-Aliassime leading the tour in wins right now, Carlos Alcaraz, who came into this year with new serve technique, new backhand technique. How are those things actually performing? And the continued monitoring of Daniil Medvedev as we wonder if he is going to start to win at the rate that we got used to him winning over the course of the last 5 or so years, which has slowed down as of late. So tons of storylines, putting them into context, looking at the statistics with Tom Corrie. Without further ado, here it is. We're joined once again by Tom Corrie, lead analyst, TennisViz, Tennis Insights, always bringing us the most cutting-edge, most insightful data and numbers on the ATP Tour. For an early 2025 check-in, I think we waited until Rome last year. We didn't want to wait that long this year because it's such good stuff when you come on, Tom, so I appreciate it.
Pleasure, Gill. Pleasure to be here. It's always good to check in before we really get stuck into the meat and veg of the ATP season with it right around the corner.
No doubt about it. You guys have been doing good stuff on social. I saw the most recent was 10 players are above a 7 in serve, return, forehand, backhand. So 10 players who you could almost give like that well-roundedness crown, right? So you started with the top 6. You got Sinner, Zverev, Alcaraz, Fritz, Medvedev, and Djokovic. There's no real surprises there. And then you have since revealed De Minaur, Tommy Paul, and we were chatting. Machac is in there, but there's one more that has not been revealed. So I'm gonna take a stab at it. All right, and you'll let me know. I'm gonna go with Grigor Dimitrov.
It's a good guess. There's been a lot of guesses of that in the comments, etc. It's almost right, but he's actually just below. And this is giving away some exclusive nuggets here for the podcast, for the podcast and the YouTube, because Machac hasn't dropped yet, but that'll come out tomorrow, so the fans will get that. Dimitrov just falls short on return quality, because actually he has matches, but he isn't across the season, and this is based on their 52-week numbers, as consistent. He has days where he misses a lot of returns. So the last player of the only 10 is Draper.
It was my second guess. That's a shame. It's a shame. I almost had it. One of the big storylines 2025 is Joao Fonseca. Certainly in terms of buzz, he's right up there. Because of the Australian Open win against Rublev, he wins his first title shortly thereafter in Buenos Aires. So that was a big pop in February. It was tough for him to play well in Rio because he was coming off of that big week. But now he plays the Sunshine Double for the first time, and it looks like we have a very Alcaraz Sinner-like rise on our hands in the coming years, which is exciting. The technical part of his game that jumps out the most is the forehand, because he can be nuclear on it. So right off the bat, my question to you is do the numbers suggest that Fonseca's forehand is as impressive as the eye test suggests?
Yeah, and the simple answer is yes. That in raw materials. So I always struggle to completely separate myself from the numbers and the eye because of my coaching background. I'm obviously looking at the techniques of the players, the biomechanics, the physicality to see what they're producing. But so he has expressed power, as you've already said. He had an average in Buenos Aires of 82 miles an hour on his forehand, and that's every forehand he's hit, not including returns, but every forehand he's hit. So that's including if he does change it up in defense or drop shots. So that's massive. The tour average is 76 miles an hour. He had RPMs of 3,000 RPMs. Tour average is 2,800. Carlos is up at 3,200, but Yannick's around 3,000. So he's putting in the type of speeds and spins that those two are putting in. And my top line when you ask me that is he reminds me of those guys, and I know that's cliche because everybody's going, oh, he's reminding us of those guys because he's a sensation. But when they first came onto the main tour, they looked like extremely impressive juniors that weren't sticking to so much set patterns of play. Sometimes Carlos is still guilty of that, but were just really expressing themselves with full power on shots where the previous big four were so used to them playing so structured with amazing skills, the best ever and all that stuff, but they were playing so structured. Whereas these guys, sometimes you're watching them, they're like, well, I wasn't expecting you to hit that shot or that. That's part of the reason why he reminds me of Carlos and Sinner, which means that he doesn't yet have the highest forehand shot quality because his actual in rate, like the percentage of balls he's landing in the court, is down at 81%, which is below the tour average of 83%. And that's even in Buenos Aires, where he won the tournament and hit his forehand great. But his raw materials are right up there.
Yeah, so he can definitely make more. I think that's been clear. I'm not surprised by that necessarily.
We do only have to look as far as the next gen, where he put in the semi-finals versus Van Ash. He went nuclear on the forehand and didn't miss, and he ends up with a 9.8 forehand shot quality, which literally there's like a handful of above 9.6s all year of any player. So that shows that he lands the forehand with the amazing attack and defense that he does. He goes bonkers on the scores. And then the last thing, which is cool, a little bit deeper and nerdier dive, which we obviously go into in this podcast, is his forehand inside in and inside out. I'll reference it a couple of times today, but one of the metrics, which is new to some people, we call winning and losing plays, which is a winning play is a winner and it's a shot leading to an opponent error. So if I hit my forehand to you in a certain area and you make a mistake, that is also captured. And then also, as important as that, or more important, it's a shot that sets up an attacking opportunity. So to do my high level explanation, I think I've done this to you before, but we're going forehand cross, me and you. I ping a forehand down the line. You get there, you scamper it back with a slice. I put a volley away. It would have been the forehand line that would have been registered as a winning play in that rally because that's the shot that set up the in attack. So if we take that as a metric, the inside in and inside out, he had an impact score, which is the winning plays over the losing plays, like what percentage are really making a difference, of 25% in that whole tournament. The tour average is 17.9, so 18%. So it was significantly higher and where he was doing a lot of the damage. And when he did that, he actually went on to win 63% of the points when he was able to get his inside in and inside out on there. So if you can do that, 63 might not sound that impressive to some people, but that's of the points. You only have to win 52% of the points to win a match. So if you're doing 63, like Federer did that one, like he won 54% of his 54% of his points in his whole career. So 63 is incredibly high.
So do not let Joao Fonseca hit a forehand from the ad side of the court. If he's hitting that run around, you're in big trouble.
That's the takeaway, exactly. Even though he's still being a bit erratic at times, even with that, you're in trouble.
Another guy with a lot of juice, Denis Shapovalov, has come on strong after a tough couple of years, but obviously a former Wimbledon semifinalist. He got up to 10 in the world in 2020. And now we have a bit of a resurgence from Denis, which I'm really happy to see, even as an impartial analyst, just because I think his play style is electrifying and really great for people to watch. He wins the title in Dallas. He makes the semis in Acapulco and loses a couple of tiebreaks to Davidovich Fokina. So Shapo is rolling. What numbers stand out as far as the Canadian is concerned?
Well, if you, great to see him back to the sort of top level of him. If you can flash up a graphic afterwards, otherwise I'll describe it, but we have a radar graphic, and if you get that on the screen, the radar graphic that we're about to flash up, the green numbers are this year. So all the matches he's played this year: Adelaide, Dallas, Acapulco. And then the orange, the radar you can sit behind, is his 52-week average, and the black is the tour average. So you can instantly see that he's made gains on the return, the forehand, the backhand, and I think pivotally, which you wouldn't associate with him, but the steal score, his actually ability to turn points round. He's actually lower on his in attack percentage. So it's not a case of what people traditionally think of, myself included, that you think in Shapo, you think in offense, you think in big serves, going after everything. But actually, his ability to turn the points around has vastly improved to 37%, where before it was down at 33%. And then I put another graphic, which you may share, but it's more standard, that his break points won this year is up at 51%. So that's sky high. And I've talked to you about before how breaking serve, the ability to win points in defense, is very well connected with that. Because against all these guys, particularly indoors and hard courts, you start a lot of first serve return points, even if you make the return in defense. So the best players turn those points around. So that stood out to me. It wasn't what I was expecting. Like you asked me, is he making more returns?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is yes. First serve return in 73% in 2025. 68 is his 52-week average. The tour average is 62. Second serve returns in up at 84%. Shapo's 52-week average is 78 and the tour average is 82. So he has improved in those areas. But also that ability to turn the points around in defense. So he makes more returns, then he turns it around. That gives you breaks of serve.
His in attack percentage is actually lower in that graphic we showed. So despite the fact that on Tennis Channel you wouldn't have seen this, Tom. I think Brett Haber asked him, "Are you attacking less? Are you playing more patient?" And his response was, "No, I'm still being aggressive. You know, there's this misconception that people think that should attack less, but that's my game and that's what makes me special." But he has attacked less. I would venture to theorize that because he's more comfortable as a mover right now, he's looking explosive around the court again. That's where you see the steal score up. He's more comfortable blocking returns, starting on defense. He's okay with that. There's not this desperation to be on top of the point because he's trusting his legs. So I mean, look, this is what I want to see. If I'm a Shapo fan, I want to see the in attack maybe come down a little bit, returns in play, and try to turn some points around defensively. I mean, in my breakdown of the Dallas final, Shapo Ruud, it was all chip return. Casper attacks that first ball on the +1, and then Denis is so quick and so talented, he turns the point around.
Exactly. And I could get that really quick. I've got 2 points to back up what you were just saying, but I can quickly put that match up, see what the steal score was in that, but I know it was decent. Yeah, 38%. So tour average, remember, is 31%. Casper's conversion average is 68. So that means everybody's averaging 32 when they play Casper, like Ruud. So he's up at 38. So yeah, exactly backing up what you were saying. And to go back to your point, I'm no doubt he's still playing with aggressive intent, but his in attack number has dropped. I'm looking at something else now that I didn't share with you, but his average rally length information, he averaged during this year 23% in the 5 to 8 range, and he usually averages 20% in that, like in terms of rally length. So whether he's meaning to or not, he's ending up in more longer rallies than he was previously. And then he's winning a high number of those and turning the points around. So whether he's meaning to or not, the stats are saying he's actually being more patient, having longer rallies and winning them.
If you miss the return, it's not a long rally. I'll say
exactly.
that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's go to Daniil Medvedev. Now, this is on the more negative end. He comes off the Australian Open, a second round loss to Lerner Tien as a reigning finalist. And this was a February where Daniil played a lot. He was active. He was trying to build some confidence. I mean, he played the 250 in Marseille, made the semis there. He played in Rotterdam and lost a little early to Mattia Bellucci. I thought his game looked better in Doha and Dubai, even though he fell in the quarters on both occasions. But, you know, we are still, and it's been a little while now that we're sort of tracking this this slight Medvedev decline. We're still on it right now. February did not do anything to sort of quell that. Um, we've talked about the serve, but for me, it's somewhat two pronged because in the long, baseline exchanges, he used to be almost impenetrable, almost unbeatable in terms of shot tolerance and consistency. And now I see more guys hanging with him in that category. Do you feel like there's evidence that physically Daniil is not as superior against his competition as he used to be?
Well, the closest metric we have that from a tactical standpoint links to that, which I already talked about with Dennis, is the steal score, because that's the ability to turn points around a defense. I looked at it in 2023 when obviously he had an amazing year. He went on that early part of the year where he hardly lost a match. He won all those, was it 5 finals back to back, I think, and won 3 of them. His steal score was 40%, and that would have been tour leading. For anything around 40% is up there with him, Carlos, Demon. In 2024, it dropped to 37%, and so far this year, he's at 36%. Now, with the caveat to your point that I just clicked it on my screen, and in Dubai and Doha combined, he was back up to 37%, which actually suggests he's about 35 for those earlier tournaments. So maybe he's turned that in the right direction, but that's backing up your theory there about whether physically he's half a step slower, or is he not making the tactical choices? Because I actually looked it up even at a deeper level. His forehands in defense in 2023, he was making 78% of all forehands. And then in 2024, he was down to just over 71. And then 2025, back up to 74. So that would suggest that it's either physical or it's tactical, like that to a point, he may have been, well, I'm a bit bored of being just this. I'm not suggesting he's bored, because I don't think that's the case, but that he's trying to do more, because there has been matches where he's randomly had a really high in attack percentage, which is not normal for him. He's usually below tour average of that. And then it'll be really high. And him and Gilles are trying to do that. You can tell.
He's talked about this in interviews. At the tail end of last year, he talked about how every match is so hard. It's a grind, and I am tired of it. And you can see him sort of reaching for extra offense and extra damage at times, to your point. He's talked about the balls, making that very difficult. And he's advocating for the quicker conditions, which makes sense. I think it would help him. But in my opinion, he never used to mind running sideline to sideline for 3 hours. Like, that used to be okay. Now it feels like he's starting to dread it. Newsflash, that happens to all players, I think. I mean, there are some lunatics out there who never get tired of running, but it is typical. Like, I saw this, I'll just say my favorite guy, the guy who I had the biggest emotional attachment to as a tennis fan, was David Ferrer. And I think he hit a certain age and he's like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not saying Daniil is there, but it is hard. It is hard work, match in and match out, to play the style that he used to play. And I think if you see the consistency going down statistically and the steal score going down statistically, I think it speaks to that a bit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And on the flip, like I said, some matches, which makes sense because he's sort of figured out in the recent matchups against like those guys at this level, he's not really concerned with beating people outside the top 10, because he's done that so much. He knows he can do it kind of whichever style he plays, like within reason. But when he's trying to beat Carlos and Yannick and Novak, if he's back fit and healthy, then there's almost like, right, well, what I'm doing isn't working. So we know that Daniil is a smart guy and Gilles is an excellent coach. So they will be trying to make moves to figure out how to beat those guys. And one way is be more aggressive yourself. But it's whether that is the right way for him and whether he can actually execute it. Because if that base of his game, being the steal score, second serve returns in, fluctuated and went down in 2024, general consistency, so I'm not talking about defense, but just forehands and backhands in, dropped 3% on the forehand, only 1% on the backhand. That's remained solid. But if those trends go down, then even if he's trying to be aggressive, he doesn't possess, as you talked about, like the biomechanics to just rip the ball like those guys do. So it's a tough matchup if he's trying to do that, and it almost feels like go back to Old Faithful and see what you can do.
Yeah, it makes adaptation difficult. We've seen so many players sort of shift their games in that more offensive direction. It's just a bigger challenge for Medvedev to do that.
Yeah,
Let's go to Carlos Alcaraz. Starts the year and it's like, all right, 5 grams onto the throat of the racket, new serve technique, which in my opinion visually just looks way, way better. And the setup or the take back, Tom, on the backhand has been tinkered with a whole lot in the last year. And I'm not sure if he's settled on one now, but you're looking at slightly different racket specs, very different serve, slightly different backhand. What are the early results for Carlos in these matters?
yeah. So I'll start with the serve because that's the one that's sort of more obvious. And the early results are, and this is very early results, obviously, but as the serve quality number is maintained the same, but there has been a slight increase in first serve in, like we're talking 1%, but that counts. Speeds remain the same, but accuracy has got a little bit better on the first serve. So 4 centimeters on average, which again, small numbers, but those things add up. If you increase your first serve percentage and you hit it more accurately, you'll get you have a better serve, and you'll get
Closer to the lines, right? You mean
close to the
so?
lines.
Yeah. So in percentage is one thing. How close to the lines is another thing. Just to clarify.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry. Um, so that's exciting for him. That hasn't turned into an increase in what we call first serve effectiveness, which is your ability to get up in the point after your serve on the next strike. It hasn't done that yet, but let's watch this space. Second serve, on the other hand, hasn't increased. If anything, he's been a little less effective and he's found himself in defense more often after the second serve. So we'll see. But early days, as you say.
No doubt. I think accuracy had to be the biggest priority for Carlos on the first serve. So it's good to see that's better. He's always been able to pump it up pretty high on the radar gun, but the missed spots were pretty consistent. So I think that's positive to see. On the second serve, by the way, I just wonder how much of it is opponents, because I think from a scouting report standpoint, everybody kind of feels like I better gun my second serve returns against Alcaraz. That's the best way to go about it, because once you kind of let the rally develop and allow it to sort of get neutral and athletic, it's so difficult to deal with him. So the serve is a little bit gettable, especially the kicker on a hard court. Like Djokovic did it in Australia. Let's crush that second serve return. So I think that's in the scouting report right now, and it might be something that Alcaraz needs to deal with and maybe create some better options on the second serve. What about his backhand, Tom?
His backhand is good signs. I mean, he was already scoring high on our metrics anyway. I know people, obviously, his forehand is so explosive and does things that like the game's never seen. So that's part of the reason why that gets the high headlines. But his backhand always scored high. It has jumped up zero point 0.1 on the backhand quality to 8.1, which actually this year puts him joint top three. There's 3 players on the 8.1 average across the ATP Tour, which is him, Novak, despite Novak's, hasn't done what he usually does. He's still had a very high backhand score when he has played, and Fritz, who's got a good backhand. And then just behind him is Draper, Machac, and this one will surprise you a little bit more, Casper Ruud, who's also improved his backhand quite a lot in terms of the placement, the accuracy. And then Sinner hasn't featured on the ATP Tour yet, so he may well jump to near that top of that list you'd expect. So yeah, that's good signs for Carlos on the backhand. He's right up there with the best backhand in the world. He wasn't far off anyway, but that tweak is working.
Okay, very good. Let's stay on backhands, huh? Stefanos Tsitsipas changes his racket. I think enough experts have now said it's a Babolat Pure Arrow, where I think we could just go ahead and say it. Which, with black strings as well, it might have been Alcaraz's exact setup. And in Dubai, he plays awesome and he wins the title, his biggest, outdoor hard court title. I think of his career, but his biggest hard court title since winning the year-end championships a few years back. Period. Just this massive turnaround after the racket change. The backhand looked good. It looked good. It looked better. You obviously on the social channels of Tennis Insights in the Greek Sport match, you posted 9.8 backhand quality, which is just absurd. But what about in the grander context of the Dubai run? How good was that backhand?
Yeah, and Tennis TV grabbed that number because they saw it. They're watching. They have access to some of our data live, and they're like, "Wow!" And the key thing, sorry, just to add on that Griggs ball, which is so incredible, was he missed three backhands in the whole match. He made 93% of backhands, which is right up there with as solid as everybody. But he hit nine winners off the backhand, and that's not even including one return and one volley because they don't go into like that backhand quality metric. So he's hit nine winners. That's unheard of on the backhand side. Not Yannick, not Carlos, not Novak in his prime posts really high number of backhand winners. People remember the amazing passing shot, but that didn't happen. And that was a relatively short two-set match. So the backhand went berserk in that one. He's definitely hitting it bigger with that setup. Confidence as well, right? Like everyone's talking about the setup, but it's not like he couldn't hit a backhand hard before. But clearly the two things together, winning some matches, and he's letting it go more. So there's definite data backing up how well he's hit that.
Was the improvement more in rally or on the return? Because I've always thought Tsitsipas's backhand has good qualities in rally. Not always perfect or great, but it has some things going for it. Return, defense, that's where it just always looked quite vulnerable. Now there were some really great backhand returns by Tsitsipas in Dubai that were just sort of, hard and stifling and deep with the drive return. What did you see as far as was it more in rally or on return?
All those numbers I just talked you through, and if you put the graphics on the screen, they were all in the rally. So they were isolating the backhand rally. So attack, neutral, defense in the rally, an aggregation of that. The returns, actually, when you look at the numbers, no notable increase in returns in terms of speed, accuracy. Actually, of course, he did do some good ones, but the aggregation across the tournament, despite winning the tournament, it wasn't stand out better.
He faced big servers. So
Yeah.
that might fat right. They were all good. Berrettini and Felix and even Greek Spore. Yeah. So maybe let's see how it plays out long term.
Yeah, and you look at the detail, Medvedev, Sonego, Kachanov, Berrettini, Grigspor, Felix all got
Yeah.
very good serves. Sonego, you're probably looking at that with the lowest serve quality number out of that, and he'll still be above tour average. He can pop it. So it's a good shout. Let's see how it unfolds. But everybody was going wild for it, saying he's returning better on socials, etc. And actually, the numbers weren't backing that up yet.
Sure. Do the numbers back me up? Because after the final, I was saying, okay, yeah, the backhand's better. I get it. Everybody's talking about it. But the serve and the forehand dominated this final. Like he was on point with his big weapons.
Yeah, and to isolate the final is exactly that. But even across the whole week, I put that note down that yeah, we have to give a shout out to. We did a post actually about the serve and the in attack percentage just on the final, but the shout out goes to his whole faithful forehand quality was back up to 8.6 across the whole tournament. That puts him right up in the top five forehand qualities on tour again. He did drop a bit. He last 52 weeks, he was 8.2. So it's still not bad. He's still like, I don't know, 11th. I need to check. But he's back. That puts him, the 8.6 is top five. His in attack percentage was up to 29%. Tour average is 24. So massive aggressive intent. And his own average is 27, so better than his own average. And then conversion score, which is, as we talked about already, is how clinical you're being, up to 75%. So if you've got 29% of your shots in attack, 24's tour average, and then you're converting 75% of those, tour average is 71. you win. And that's always been something Steph is always high on the conversion score when he's in form, because he loves to come forward. He creates those attacking chances. And if he's clinical, he's back to being a top five player. So the backhand will grab the limelight because it's always been the thing that people have said wasn't good enough. So the fact that it's got better will grab the limelight. But actually, him doing the other things well wins in the tournament.
Right, right. Preaching to the choir on that. Although I did sort of regret maybe not giving more credit to the back end than I did post final. But anyway, let's go to another guy who has had a really big year. Felix Auger-Aliassime. Similar storyline to the other Canadian and Denis Shapovalov. It's been a couple of down years. He hasn't been the most healthy. And now he looks awesome. I've talked about it throughout the year. I think from when I first saw him in Adelaide, I was looking at a lot of stuff as far as improvements, and I'll just throw them your way. And I don't know how much of these are going to be involved in the stats you looked at or not, but I'm looking at a forehand drop shot that he's added to his arsenal. I'm looking at better accuracy on the second serve. I'm looking at a better pre-serve ritual on the serve overall that I think has helped him serve better. And I'm also thinking that he's actually finding more forehands on the second serve return, and therefore starting his second serve return points in a better position because he's moved back. So that's kind of my big four. Oh, and he's moving better. Okay, so those are all of the things I think he's doing better. What do you got for me?
Yeah, and to back up your point, that radar graphic that we flashed up earlier, if you look at every single one of his serve, return, forehand, backhand conversion still has nudged out slightly. So it's more of a cumulative effect of, which is often the case, right, in marginal gains. At this level, it's about doing lots of things a little bit better rather than always just one huge thing, despite what we just talked about with Steph and his backhand. But so that's the overall view. But the thing that's improved the most and got back to like elite level is his serve. So that's back where it was when he was at his prime. His prime sounds like he's past it. He's only what? How old is Felix now?
Well,
He's
yeah, he's mid-20s. He's
yeah, but he was. It's because he was so good, so young. That anyway, back to let's say top 10 level. Is that his first serve in so far this year? So just his first serve percentage, to use a classic metric, is up to 68%. His average last year was 65%. His first serve speed has maintained an average of 126 miles an hour. Tour average is 119. So he's still absolutely cooking it, but making more first serves. And then I know you like this one, so you can bring it up on the screen. But then the effectiveness graphic shows that he's up at 74.5 first after his first serve goes in, where he's either hit an ace, an unreturned, or he's in attack on the next shot. So if you're making, that shows how important the first serve percentage is, because
what's the
if you
tour average for that?
it's on the screen there at 59.5, so a good 15%, sorry, over the
Huge.
tour average. So he's absolutely smoking it. And then the second serve, to go on your accuracy point of view, the accuracy has improved slightly. I've got that number in front of me, but that ends up in having an overall second serve effectiveness of 37%, 36.9, 37%. And again, the tour average is 23. So big numbers on the serve. It's always been one of his best tools. And as it's been talked about, in 2025, on the ATP Tour alone, he's already got 17 matches. So these numbers now, these averages, are even more impressive, because as the sample size gets bigger, it's harder to maintain like standout figures. So that's really good signs for him.
Totally. Look, it's so important that his serve is effective, because when he gets into rallies and he has to hit a lot of backhands from the back of the court, now he's just not a very special player. But when he's hitting first ball forehands because he's smoking his serve, as you mentioned, he's a very, very special player. So it makes all the difference. And it's another example of, the strengths, how strong the strengths are often gonna dictate these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Let's end on a man who just won his first career title in Tomas Machac, who's a really well-rounded player. We started the show saying that he's one of the guys who's above a 7 quality on serve, return, forehand, backhand. He's also extremely athletic. Doesn't have a weapon that really jumps out and stands out necessarily because he's not a serve dominant player. He's not a forehand dominant player. What do the numbers say that Machac does better than most of his peers?
Yeah, exactly. Great question. Well, to back up to what you said, he's one of there's only 10 with all 4 shot qualities above. So that if that is a measure, that's top 10 level. Also, his highest compared to his peers, I'm just getting it in front of me now, is his return quality, because he's actually at 8th on return quality behind the usual suspects. All of those are top 10 players: Sinner, Medi, Alcaraz, Djokovic, Zverev, Draper, Fritz, him, and Demon, 8th and 9th. So his returns are elite level. His athleticism is elite level. But sometimes he hasn't always backed it up with sometimes discipline of shot selection, particularly in defense. Whereas this year, or actually I've highlighted here, sorry, I've just highlighted Acapulco. Again, steal score jumps up to 37%, 4% above his average. So that's a big difference if you're winning that many points in defense. And then his backhand quality is high. His return and his backhand, in a nutshell, are the highest qualities compared to the rest of the tour, with a special asterisk to the forehand, because on its day, that's 9s, because he is smoking it. But he also can be more erratic off that side. So the overall average ends up not as impressive.
Yeah, it really depends on the day with the Machac forehand. That steal score, I think, given the way he moves, when he starts committing himself more defensively, and even when he starts getting stronger physically, because there have been plenty of physical issues popping up, I think that steal score can, I don't want to say go higher, but like it can be at 37 every week instead of just sometimes when he has his best week.
Yeah, and if he does that, he'll continue to climb the rankings, because that's a significant number of points you're turning around. And 37 is up there with the best defenders. Like I said before, it's only Demon, Yannick, Carlos, Medi that actually and Jocko that actually are higher than that. That's right up there. So yeah, he's definitely one to. He's not one to watch, is he? He's just one of 500.
Well, look,
so, like I'm like some player that's just come through the futures. He's already one to watch, but he's
top
one
10
to
prospect.
Yeah, exactly. He
top 10 prospect.
Got the game to do that.
You are you're a top 1 prospect as far as podcast guests on Monday Match Analysis. I appreciate it, Tom. Always great. Thanks for staying up late for me as well.
Cheers, Gill. Great to be here. Speak to you soon.